The morning the old iron chest was pulled up from the muddy riverbank, the entire town felt as if it had been holding its breath for years. A gray sky hung low over the water as a backhoe's metal teeth scraped against something solid, something that didn't belong there. Workers paused, people gathered, and for a long moment the only sound was the engine's low rumble. Then a hammer struck the lid, and with a crack like distant thunder, it opened to reveal stacks of aged currency, a bundle of letters tied tightly with faded twine, a pocket watch frozen at mid-afternoon, and a slim ledger crowded with ink that hadn't seen daylight in 160 years. That single moment, the glint of old coins, the smell of damp leather, the stunned silence in the crowd transformed a routine construction project into a mystery that would reshape how a community understood its own past. Historians were called, descendants rushed to the site, and within hours the story had become bigger than anyone expected. A buried Civil War chest, hidden through chaos and loss, suddenly returned to the world. To understand why the discovery felt like uncovering a sleeping ghost, you have to go back to the final frantic months of the Civil War in 1864 and 1865. Money didn't move silently through digital systems. It traveled by train, wagon, and horseback, guarded by soldiers and clerks who wrote down every detail by hand. Rumors of missing payrolls, diverted shipments, or stolen war chests were common, often whispered in taverns or around campfires. Some stories were excuses families invented to explain vanished savings. Others carried fragments of truth: a train rerouted in secret, a convoy ambushed at dusk, a bank clerk making a desperate choice. Records were lost, officers reassigned, and entire shipments simply disappeared into the fog of war. So when the chest surfaced, it stirred up more than excitement. It revived a century-and-a-half-old question. What actually happened to the money that went missing in those final days, and whose lives were shaped by that disappearance? The first forensic examinations were quiet and methodical. Conservators photographed every coin, every torn edge of paper, every rusted buckle. Under magnification, the fibers of the banknotes revealed signatures from institutions that no longer existed, absorbed long ago into modern banking systems. The coins carried mixed mint marks, suggesting the chest had traveled across state lines before being hidden. But the letters were the true key. One was written by a captain using quick shorthand, referencing a delayed consignment, and a necessary diversion to the depot to keep soldiers paid. Another letter, penned by a worried clerk, described the impossibility of reconciling ledgers during the chaos of retreat. And the small ledger itself, each line written by hand-contained names, dates, transactions, and notes that linked directly to real soldiers and civilians, documented in census records and regimental rolls. No single clue solved the mystery. Instead, 1,000 small details began stitching together a picture of frantic decisions made under pressure. Choices that ultimately buried this chest in the mud until the day it resurfaced. But after the scientific excitement came the complicated part: deciding what the discovery meant and who had the right to control it. Museums wanted the chest for study. Historical societies proposed public exhibitions. Universities offered advanced conservation labs. Families stepped forward with stories passed down through generations. An ancestor who mentioned a hidden chest. A photograph of a uniformed relative. An envelope with handwriting eerily similar to the ledgers. Newspapers amplified the drama, painting the find as part treasure hunt, part courtroom battle. Scholars debated whether the contents were military payroll, emergency civilian funds, or a mixture of both. Community leaders insisted the story should be told locally, not locked away behind glass in a distant institution. And beneath all the debates lay harder questions: whose history had been preserved and whose had been ignored. What role had marginalized people, individuals? Freedmen, immigrants played in guarding, transporting, or witnessing shipments during the war. The chest's arrival forced everyone to reconsider the past, not as a set of fixed facts, but as a series of overlapping lives. The discovery didn't just change museum plans or legal filings, it quietly changed people. A cafe near the riverbank became the unofficial meeting room for theories and memories. Teachers used the ledger's names to bring their history lessons to life, watching students fall into stunned silence as they read soldiers' letters aloud. Museum attendance soared as locals tried to connect their own families to the recovered items. A frail elderly woman brought out a brittle envelope with handwriting identical to one of the letters. A man unfolded a photograph of his great-grandfather and argued passionately that the ledger confirmed an old family story about lost pay. These personal connections shifted the focus from treasure to healing, from ownership to acknowledgement. Even those with no direct link to the chest felt something, an invitation to reconsider what their town had lived through, what stories it had inherited, and which ones remained untold. For many, the chest became a symbol of long-delayed truth, a chance to repair forgotten chapters of the past. In the end, the chest did not deliver a simple answer. Scientists published their findings. Historians debated the interpretation of each entry. Courts worked slowly to determine legal custody. But the real value of the discovery wasn't the coins or the paper. It was the conversations it ignited, the sense of shared curiosity, and the emotional echo of lives lived long before ours. The ledger reminded everyone that history isn't just about winners and losses, it's about ordinary people trying to survive extraordinary circumstances. And even now, long after the chest was lifted from the mud, one question lingers in the minds of all who followed the story. If you uncovered a ledger from a war that shaped your ancestors' lives, what would you hope to find written next to their names? Bravery, sacrifice, hope, or perhaps an unexpected, ordinary kindness that never made it into the history books? This rediscovered chest offered artifacts, but its greatest gift was the reminder that behind every line of faded ink lies a life that mattered, a story waiting to be seen, and a past that still asks something of us today.